understand. Sorry, fellas.
Good evening, morning, good afternoon, wherever you find yourself in the world today. For this here, it's 5 o'clock p.m. in Yerushalayim Kodesh, and here I'm talking from our World Mizrahi offices. And it's a tremendous zchut for us at World Mizrahi to be hosting Rabbi Jacob J. Schacter in person in Yerushalayim here with Rabbi HaChevra, who are visiting Israel, visiting Yerushalayim, and are delivering this, the 9th in the series of To Heal a Fractured World on the teachings of Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. We, of course, are hosting this series at World Mizrahi in conjunction with the HaChevra LeCheker HaMikra, our friend Yisrael Crystal, the board of the HaChevra, who bring the teachings of Rabbi Sacks to a very broad Hebrew-speaking audience. And here together, we have partnered together to have this worldwide series of perpetuating the memory, the thoughts, the teachings, and the Torah of our teacher, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. As mentioned, it is such a privilege to have this to offer the 9th in the series by our very special guest speaker. And what's beautiful, as I said, is I have the opportunity of being in the room here in our offices listening to Rabbi Schacter. To almost all of us, Rabbi Schacter does not need any introduction, but I will mention that formally today, Rabbi Schacter is the Yeshiva University professor of Jewish history and Jewish thought, and of course held prestigious rabbinic positions. And of course, us Rabbonim know Rabbi Schacter not only as a university professor and a community rabbi, but as a mentor. I've had the privilege and opportunity not only of hosting Rabbi Schacter in South Africa when I played a role there, but also being present in recent years at the rabbinic training programs that the Rav does, the Archei Kala, for so many rabbis across the United States and beyond, who come to improve our everything we need to do to be effective Rabbonim, more sensitive, more insightful, and hopefully making the biggest difference that we can. So it is a tremendous personal zchut for me as Priyat Mizrahi and all of us at Mizrahi to host Rabbi Schacter, who will be speaking on the reflections on the life of Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, here live from Yerushalayim. Bruchim Habeim to all of you. Welcome, Rabbi Schacter.
Shalom to all of you, and welcome to our program. It is for me indeed an extraordinary honor to be introduced by Rav Doron and to be able to be part of this very significant program in memory of a beloved friend. My wife and I are not only visiting Yerushalayim, but we actually bought an apartment and we are living in Yerushalayim. We came to be in our apartment. And so we feel a very strong, close connection to Mizrahi, to Rav Doron, to World Mizrahi, and to everything that Rav Doron does so magnificently on behalf of all of us. I had a moment of nostalgia when I came into this building. My family was here for the first time in Israel in 1967, just about 10 days after the end of Milchemet Sheshet HaYamim. My father then, Rabbi Herschel Schachter, was the president of Mizrahi Apola Mizrahi in America, and he had an office here in Bet Meir. And coming up the steps brought me back many, many years, and brought me back not only to my father, but to the incredible work that Mizrahi does in Israel and throughout the world. We are together now, this is the 9th in the series, to reflect on the life, the accomplishments, and the teachings of Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. I must tell you that it's still hard for me to believe, so year and a half plus or so since his passing, that he's no longer with us. I had a warm and close relationship with him. My wife and I were in his home and Lady Elaine's home in St. John's Wood in London. And he was in our home. He was in our home in the Upper West Side of Manhattan when I was at the Jewish Center, when he was still the rabbi of Marble Arch before he became the chief rabbi. And then after becoming the chief rabbi, he came with Lady Elaine to our homes in Brookline, Massachusetts, and in Teaneck, New Jersey. I knew that he was ill, but I had no idea how ill he was. and simply can't believe that his voice and his ebullient personality filling a room is no longer with us. Other talks in this series already have, and I'm sure will continue, to explore various aspects of the teachings of Rabbi Sacks: Jewish identity, anti-Semitism, family, Jewish unity, science and religion, hope and faith, responsibility, morality, tradition, leadership, etc. But my interest is to focus on what can we draw for ourselves from his life. This is not so much about what his teachings were, but who he was. And why is that relevant to me, and why is that relevant to you? Yes, we know, of course, that Rabbi Sacks was a spellbinding orator. He was a gifted writer, a most effective communicator, but that was him. And why is that relevant to me? And he is no longer with us. We take away not just his teachings, but we take away lessons of his life. And that's what I want to focus on. We're not going to write 36 highly popular books that will address very significant contemporary issues. We're not going to receive highly prestigious awards and honorary doctorates and debate atheists and appear regularly on BBC and be ambassadors for Judaism in the state of Israel on the world stage. So that's not going to happen. So L'may nafkamina, what does it have to do with me and you? How do we bring the lessons of his life into our own personal lives? That's the focus. I want to suggest there are a number of lessons that we could learn that I have myself tried to internalize consciously and strategically since his passing. Number one, Rabbi Sacks's life teaches us that one person can make a difference. Everyone can make a difference, and you don't need to be a Rabbi Sacks in order to make a difference. You can make a difference, and I can make a difference. In one of his celebrated Sichot Musar, Reb Chaim Shmulevitch talks about the principle of kavod habriot, the principle of having honor for another human being, respect for another human being. And he says that even in the context of Bilam, who he describes in really graphic terms as pachot shebepechutim, he's the lowest of the low, avi avot, kol hapchitiut sheba olam. He is the epitome of the lowliness. And even in the context of Bilam, says Reb Chaim, that there is such a concept of kavod habriot. And in order to explain it, he draws attention to point to the inherent greatness of every human being. The Medrash says in Vayikra Rabbah, V'hayita rak lamala, pasuk in Devarim, V'hayita rak lamala, yachol kamoni, says the Medrash, you might think that Hashem says you might be like me. So therefore the pasuk says, rak lamala. Rak means not quite, almost. It's not quite. Gedulati, gedolami, gedulatcha. Continues the Medrash, kedoshim tihiyu, yachol kamoni, you should be holy. Okay, Hashem says you should be holy. You think you might be holy like I am holy? No, it says afterwards, ki kadosh ani, I am holy, kedushati lema'ala mi kedushatcha. Yes, Reb Chaim, what are we thinking? What, I might think that I am as great as God? I might think that I am as holy as God? What's the havamina? I need a limud in the pasuk to tell me, no, you know what? You're not as great as God. Obviously, I'm not as great as God. I need a diuk in a pasuk to teach me. So Reb Chaim says the only reason why we ask that question is because we do not understand how great a person could be. What Reb Chaim says is powerful, and I would say even shocking. The only reason why we think such a question is because we're not aware of the greatness of a human being. If we understood, says Reb Chaim Shmulevitch, Sichot Musar, if we understood how great we could be, then there's a havamina. Of course, the maskana is not, but we could entertain for a shred of a quarter of a second that maybe, Yachol Kamoni. Chazal understood what each human being is capable of achieving, the greatness of every single human being. And so the first lesson that I would like to draw from the life of my friend, who I still can't believe, I still mamash can't believe. I can't believe that I can't hear his voice. I can't believe that I can't have a geschmacke conversation with him. And I enjoyed them so much. The first lesson is that each one of us can make a difference, that each one of us has greatness. And Reb Chaim is not talking about Rabbi Sacks. He's not talking about Gedolei Yisrael. He's not talking about extraordinary, great leaders and geniuses. He's talking about every Jew. He's talking about me, and he's talking about you, and each one of us could make a real difference. And so I invite you, as I invite myself, to think about what difference can I make within the gedorim of my reality, within the confines of how I live my life, where I live my life, the role that I play. What difference can I make? A Pashat Yid, any Jew, any human being, we could make a difference. The second point that I want to make about Rabbi Sacks that was always striking to me from the day that I first met him is that Rabbi Sacks was a mavakesh. A mavakesh means a seeker. Rabbi Sacks was born into a traditional Jewish home, not a learned Jewish home, and he had a plan. He enrolled in Cambridge University. He was going to be a philosopher. But he recognized along the way that something was missing. And so at the ripe old age of something like 20, he decided to travel to the United States, particularly to meet three people. He wanted to meet the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he wanted to meet Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik, and he wanted to meet Dr. Norman Lamb. And he met them all, and he left them with encounters that changed his life. They inspired him, all of them, to look beyond where he was. They inspired him to devote his energies and his life on behalf of the Jewish people. He had little formal Jewish education at that time, but he rolled up his sleeves. He returned to England, and he determined to seek it and continue to seek it for more and more and more every time he came into our home. Every time he came into our home, New York City, Brookline, Teaneck, he went straight to the bookcase. And he's looking around. Maybe there's a book here that I don't know yet. And he virtually had his coat on. He didn't even say hello with a gesunte hello. He was drawn to the bookcase. Maybe there's something here that I could learn from. And he would sit down and he would lose himself. He was a mavakesh. The Torah tells us in Sefer Shmos that after Yisro spent some time with his family in the Israelite camp, the Torah says, Ati adati ki gadol Hashem mikol Elokim. Now I know that God is the greatest of all the gods. Zot Rashi melamed shahaya makir b'chol avodah zarah sheba'olam. He knew all the idols. Shelo hiniach avodah zarah shelo avodah. When he said, now I know that God is the greatest God, he knew what he was talking about because he knew every other God, because he went to look one after another. For my whole life, I thought that this is a kitrug, this is an indictment of Yisro. How terrible. A compulsive idolater, he's addicted to idol worship, he can't get enough. But then more recently, I came to the opposite conclusion. His whole world, in fact, was a world of idolatry. That this is l'shvach of Yisro. In the world in which he lived, he came across some avodah zarah, and it wasn't enough for him. He was seeking something else, something more spiritual. And then he went to another one and to another one. In the context of his reality, he was a mavakesh to seek more and more spirituality. He wasn't happy with what he was. He wasn't happy with what he accomplished. He wanted more and more and more. And then he realized, after Yodati, finally, oh my God, this is really wrong. Now I know that the God of Israel, the emes God, the true God, Ati Yodati ki gadol Hashem mikolo Elohim, he's greater than any other gods. It's in praise of Yisro. Yisro was a mavakesh, and this was Rabbi Sacks. He reached greatness. I must tell you, there were times when I wanted to visit England, and there were times when I had students with me that we were going on a trip, and I wanted to introduce them to Rabbi Sacks. I called Joanna in the office. Joanna, I'd like to see the rabbi. I'd like to bring students. I'm sorry, Rabbi Schacter. He is in a room. He's not coming out for the next month. He's writing a book. I know, but it's me. It's JJ. We're friends. I know, but I can't I can't interrupt him. Absolute focus, mavakesh, one book after another, learning, reading, growing. And that's relevant to me, and that's relevant to you. Let's not be happy and complacent with where we are. Let's not just be satisfied with what we have achieved. Whatever it is that we may have achieved, whatever it is that we're studying, that we're learning, whatever relationships we've had, whatever knowledge we have, it could be a little, it could be a lot, we're very busy. You know what? There's always something more to learn. Let's be a mavakesh. Let's seek more. Let's try to grow. Let's try to achieve more. Each one of us on our own darga, each one of us on our own level. You don't have to be him. You could be you and I could be me. But let's not be satisfied. Let's not be complacent. Let's try to accomplish more. We can learn more. We could do more. We could know more. Ben adam lamakom, ben adam lachavero, ben adam la'atzmo. We're not done where we are. There's more that we could do. Number 3, Rabbi Sacks demonstrated for me, probably more than anything else, that the larger world in which we live matters. Now, Baruch Hashem, I know most about American Jewry, but I would imagine this is true more or less elsewhere in the world. I know that when it comes to America, Orthodox Judaism, Baruch Hashem, is thriving with strong confidence and institutional strength and political influence and extraordinary unself-consciousness. Orthodoxy in America has achieved a presence and a prominence simply unimaginable even a half century ago. We've got a long way to go, but from where we came, it's mamash lo yeuman. We have day schools and shuls and mikvahs and restaurants. We're blessed with thriving communities. We can live our entire lives, and many of us do live our entire lives within the confines of our own community. And we could assume, or we could conclude, was geht mir an dorten garnished. I don't care what's going on in the rest of the world. I'm doing fine. I'm okay. My focus is myself, my family, my community. We have to strengthen ourselves. And was geht on in the Welt? It's really not so directly relevant to me. But Rabbi Sacks taught us that this is short-sighted. He taught us that the world outside of the confines of the Jewish world actually matters. Shortly after he became the chief rabbi of the United Hebrew Congregations of the British Commonwealth in 1991, he made a very important decision. He decided that in addition to becoming the chief rabbi of the Jews, he was going to become the chief rabbi of the Goyim. And he devoted himself incredibly, I don't know where he had the time, to becoming a spokesman for Jewish values in the public marketplace, to bring a Jewish voice to the world at large. In one of his quotes, he wrote, quote, "To be a Jew is to be true to our faith while being a blessing to others regardless of their faith." I don't know anyone else who was able to do what he did. He writing in the newspapers, on the radio, on the television, meeting with heads of state, a moral voice for Judaism in the world at large. We're not going to appear, you and me, we're not going to appear on BBC. We're not going to be invited to speak to the European Parliament in Brussels or the Vatican in Rome or the House of Lords, of which he was a member, or 10 Downing Street in London. So what can we do? What can we do? So I invite you to think, do we have non-Jewish neighbors? Do we talk to them? Do we have a relationship with them? Do we show them that to be a Jew is a Kiddush Hashem? Do we model human decency for them? Do we visit our local policemen and firemen on Thanksgiving Day? I'm speaking now as an American. There are, I'm sure, other similar such days in other countries. Do we express our hakarat hatov to them for all the work that they do? Do we feed the homeless? Each one of us, wherever we are, can't just be satisfied with our inner Jewish focus. Rabbi Sacks, Zichrono Livracha, taught us and devoted unbelievable energy to represent Jewish values in the marketplace of the general world. And we cannot just simply be complacent and say, Anias nafshi yitzalti, I took care of myself. Baruch Hashem, I have erliche kinder. Mirz Hashem, erliche einiklach. Baruch Hashem, I have a from shul. Baruch Hashem, I'm doing what I'm doing chesed. That's wonderful. But we need to look beyond that as well. Number one is every person makes a difference. Every person makes a difference. The power of every individual. Number two, to be a mavakesh. I'm inviting you. Don't just stop now. You know what, Rabbi, I heard this so many times when I was a pulpit rabbi. You know, when I retire, I'll have time. Now I'm busy. Be a mavakesh. Go search, grow. Whatever way you can, push yourself a little bit more. Whether it's interpersonal relationships, whether it's an extra pasuk chumash, whether it's doing an extra chesed. Seek something more for yourselves in your life. Number three, care about the world at large. And number four, parent. I know many Jewish communal leaders who regretfully sacrifice their children on the altar of the Jewish community. That they are so busy in the world at large. They are so busy helping, doing, teaching, running, inspiring, that they just assume that their kids are going to be okay. They assume that their spouses are going to take care of the kids. And they're very busy. And their own children sometimes fall through the cracks. Who was busier than Rabbi Jonathan Sacks? Who had more to do than Rabbi Jonathan Sacks? Torah Shebechsav, Torah Shebal Peh. He was all over. And I invite you to listen to the way his daughter Gila spoke about him. You know, the Rambam tells us, did you ever wonder how many people did Avram Avinu influence? Avram Avinu, Lech lecha me'artzecha mi'moladetecha mi'beis avicha, and he leaves and he takes with him his wife and Lot, Bes hanefesh asher asu bechora, vayetzu lo leches artza kenoah. And they're on the way and they're leaving. When Avram Avinu turned around, did he see the end of the line? How many people were there on his line? How many people did he influence? I know Rashi says Avraham megayer es ha'anoshim soyem megayer es han. Give me a number. So the Rambam in Hilchos Avodah Zarah Perek Aleph says ad shenitzkaptzu elav alafim urivavot. You hear such a thing? We're talking about a massive human kiruv machine. Ad shenitzkaptzu elav, they gathered around him. Alafim is thousands, plural. Rivavot, a rivava is 10,000. Tens of thousands of people he influenced. He turned around, he couldn't see the end of the line. Way beyond the horizon. So I ask you, so what happened to them? So where did they go? Vayera Chayesara told us, Vayetze, Vayishlach, Vayeshev, Miketz, Vayigash, Vayechi. What happened to them? What was the nitzchiyus of Avram Avinu? What was eternal about Avram Avinu's contribution? Ki b'Yitzchak yikare l'chazar. It was Yitzchak. It was his child that carried the mantle of leadership and ultimately was responsible for the continuation of the values that his father represented to this world. Av Hamon Goyim. Where are they in the rest of Chumash? Ki b'Yitzchak yikare l'chazar. And so I invite all of us, pay attention to your children. I was mesmerized and moved. I don't know Gila. I never met Gila. I wish someday I will. The way she spoke when her father won the Templeton Prize, the way she spoke often. You'll find it on YouTube. Just Google it. the way she spoke about her father is the way a child speaks about a father who cares about a child. It's not just platitudes, and it's not just from the distance, but there's a certain warmth. And that is something that all of us can learn. If you're a great leader, and if you're a voyeyit, pay attention to your children. Pay attention to your grandchildren. Ultimately, Kibi Yitzchak, Yikari Lechazara, and we learned that in a major way from my late beloved friend. I want to conclude with one final message. I want to conclude with the fact, this is number 5, that Rabbi Sacks was an Ish Emunah, a person of faith. I'm sure you know and you understand that it's one thing to preach faith. I assume that rabbis and pulpit leaders preach faith. Have to have faith, you have to have emunah. It's quite something else to be internally and personally a sincere and genuine person of faith. Rabbi Sacks was sick twice before the final illness that took his life. He battled cancer twice, and he was asked a number of years ago, why is it that he did not reflect on this in his writings? I must tell you that I did not know this. I was not privy to this. And he didn't talk about it, and he didn't write about it. Why didn't he write about it? And he said the following, and I quote, it's very simple. I saw my late father in his 80s go through 4 or 5 major operations. Now, my late father, Oliver Shalom, didn't have much Jewish education, but he had enormous emunah. I used to watch him saying Tehillim in the hospital, and I could see that he was getting stronger. It seemed to me that his mental attitude was, he's now Rabbi Sacks talking about his father, I'm leaving this to Hashem. If he sees that it's time for me to go, then it's time for me to go. And if he still needs me to do things here, he'll look after me. And I adopted exactly that same attitude. And so on both occasions, said Rabbi Sacks, I felt that if this is the time that Hashem needs me up there, thank you very much for my time down here. I've enjoyed every day. I feel very blessed. And if he wants me to stay, and there's still work for me to do here, then he, God, will be part of the refuah. And I put my trust in him. So there was no test of faith at any point, just these simple moments at which to say, Biado Afkid Ruchi. That was my thought. And since we say that every day in Adon Olam, I didn't feel the need to write a book about it. It was for me not a theological dilemma at all. I had faith, said Rabbi Sacks, full stop. Wow. This is not a preacher preaching about faith. This is not a rabbi sermonizing about faith. This is someone who is facing a major crisis. Biyado, biyadcha, afkid ruchi. What a lesson for us. And so as we continue this series of lessons that we could learn from Rabbi Sacks, both from his Torah Shebaal Peh, his Torah Shebechsav, my focus is on the Torah HaChaim of Rabbi Sacks. What can we learn from his life's experiences? And there's so much that we could learn. There are many lessons that we could learn from the life of the late Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, Zichrono Livracha, Rav Yaakov Yitzchak ben David Aryeh Veliba, Tehei Nishmato Tzrura, Yitzaror HaChayim. Thank you for joining, and I wish all of you well. Shalom.
I'll just conclude just to say thank you so much to Rabbi Schacter. What an honor and what a zchut. I sat here as a Talmid before the Rebbe, writing out all of these 5 messages and what an impact it made on me in each and every one. Such an unbelievable message of the life of Rabbi Sacks, so beautifully articulated by, I didn't realize the close friendship between the Rav and the Rebbitzin with the Rabbi Sacks and Lady Elaine Tivad L'chaim Arukim. And what powerful, inspiring messages for us to emulate. And Bezrat Hashem, we thank you so much, Rav JJ, for the beautiful words. And we hope to continue ongoing this series of continue to learning from the incredible personality, the incredible life, the man of faith, the mavakesh, the mavakesh Hashem, the person who made such a difference in so many people's lives, inspiring us to make such a difference, the person who parented in such a beautiful way. May each and every one of us in our own lives be able to take these messages forward and Bezrat Hashem be that living example that we all aspire to in our own lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.